I'm Michelle Cromer.
And I'm Pearl Maldonado.
And y'all have tuned in to our podcast, Creating a Meaningful Life, where we ask ourselves big questions and we search for meaningful answers. How are you, Perla?
I'm doing great.
Good, me too. We've got a big thing we want to talk about today. And
that
Venus is retrograde, March the 1st through April the 14th.
No, that's a long time. It's 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's a long time. It happens every 8 years in the same sign. So think about 2017, about this time of year, 2017, where y'all might have been. This was Venus is the beauty. It's the beauty planet. It's feminine. This was the real big movement for me too.
Yep.
That happened. Emily's List happened. It was a very profound time. So whatever was happening in your life at that time, that may circle back around. But I'm the professor. I want to talk about where we get the name. I think it's important. Y'all may not care, but I love history. So Venus, we get so much from the Romans. And the Romans, who we have a calendar now, January was the goddess Janus, because Janus, because she had a face here and a face in the back, so she could see the future and the past. But they named Venus, that planet, because it was so beautiful. And they just felt that it really represented love, and that's how they gave it that power. And then the Greeks named it Aphrodite, and the Babylonians named it Ishtar. So we kept Venus because of the Romans. So I want to tell you a quick story that I teach at the University of Texas when I'm teaching my goddess classes, because it's a perfect example of the journey and the meaning of Venus retrograde. So there was a Sumerian goddess named Inanna. And Inanna was on the top of she was in charge of the upper world, but her sister, E, was on the bottom of the darkness and the depth and the unseen. And so she heard one day that her sister E, they didn't get along, by the way, her sister E's husband died, and she really thought, well, I'm going to go down and I'm going to just give my condolences and, I'm just going to see her. But anyone that goes to the underworld, I don't care if you're a goddess or not, will never come back. So she told a faithful servant, listen to me, if I'm not back in 3 days, I need for you to come get me. Well, we know 3 in symbolism is a very powerful number. We have the Trinity. We have a lot of things that are representing, the number 3. So she goes down, but when she gets there, she has to go through 7 gates. Another number, 7 deadly sins, 7 chakras, 7 dwarfs, 7 days. This is a big number. So each gate, she had to take something off. Then finally her jewelry. So when she finally got to the underworld after the 7th gate, she was completely naked. And her sister was livid, didn't want to see her, was very upset, and killed her and put her on some meat hooks. 3 days go by, and her trusty servant went to the other gods and go, look, she's not back yet. I'm telling you, there's something wrong here. So they finally said, okay, we're going to send down a couple of minions, some mystical creatures that it doesn't matter if they go through the gates because they can pass through. So when the 2 mythical creatures, little tiny mythical creatures, get there, her sister E is wailing because she had lost her husband, they thought, or when she killed her sister, or both. And they really went to her and they helped her and they felt her empathy and they gave her audience and they held that sacred space. And she was so grateful that she said to the little minions, what can we do for you? What can I do for you? And they said, we want Inanna back. So she very reluctantly gave her the breath of life. Her sister came back to life, and she said, look, you can go back up and rule the upper world, but you got to find somebody to take your place down here. She's like, okay, oop-a-doop-a-doo. She gets back. Well, lo and behold, her boyfriend, that horrible guy, was just carrying it on and lollygagging around with all these women. And she was so upset that she sent him to the underworld. And she never liked the sister either. So she sent her. So they do 6 months, 6 months, 6 months. So anyway, that is the story of Inanna and how Venus retrograde really represents stripping the layers. This is a time for us to really look at ourselves and what are we holding on to? And like she did, face your shadow. What does that mean to you, Pearl? Facing your shadow.
The things that you're most afraid of,
Right.
Get out of your comfort zone.
That's a really good point. And it's about death. She died and she was renewed. So what is it that you have to transform in your life, right? I mean, what is that? Is it You're hanging around with people that you shouldn't. You're too trusty. I don't have any idea. But that's kind of this is kind of the theme of Venus retrograde. And it's nothing to be feared. I mean, this is just a time that happens, but it's a really good time to understand that past relationships are going to come up.
Well, what good things happen to Venus?
Good things that happen are you're going to want to really sit with yourself and figure out, what can I do in my life to make it more pleasing to me? It's great for love and relationships, for just really inner growth, self-reflection, and creativity. Is there a painting you want to paint? Paint it. Is there a book you want to write? Start it. This is a great time for that. This is not a good time for cosmetic surgery. You don't know this, but the last Venus retrograde, I got cancer in my face, and there was nothing I could do about it. When you have a hole in your face the size of a silver dollar because of cancer, what am I going to do? You have to do it. Do you remember I had to have my hands reconstructed 5 times? So sometimes there's nothing you can do, but this is not a time for Botox, a facelift, lip stuff, or whatever, people do. This is not a time.
Bangs, like you told me.
Oh, yeah, bangs. Bangs are never a good idea, but you don't want to, this is not a good time for bangs. This is not a really good time for
Tattoos.
No, that's exactly right. No tattoos, ever. That kind of skipped our generation. But yeah, so not a good time for tattoos because there could be infection, or you would be, regretting the tattoo that you got, for example. Or if you start a relationship when Venus is retrograde, you're not going to be able to see clearly that person. So maybe you just have some coffee dates and just,
plan.
Just take things very, very slowly.
What about getting married?
This is not a good time to get married. Venus is retrograde. No, it is not a good time to get married. If you've already got your wedding plan, then I would just set some intentions with your future partner and let them anchor you both in some grounding energy and be grateful. I mean, how about that? And then I would circle myself with some white light. If you're both walking down the aisle, that's a little old-fashioned. Whatever your partner and you are doing to celebrate that day, I would just wrap myself up with some light and protection.
Let's just plan, plan yourself out a little bit. It doesn't mean that your marriage is going to fall apart, but, something may go wrong. The care may not show up.
Exactly. And it's a great time to travel inward, to maybe even go to sacred spaces, but to reconnect and ask yourself some really hard questions. Am I where I'm supposed to be? Who is in my life, and are they bringing me value, or are they vampires? Set some limits and boundaries. This is the time to self-reflect and to really let go of relationships that no longer serve your high purpose. And we all have those people in our lives, and it doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't have to. Every time I block someone, I always let them know I'm going to block them. I don't like surprises in my life. So I just say, whatever, this is how I'm feeling. Let's revisit, but da-da-da-da-da. I really do. I have very strong limits and boundaries in my life. I don't allow a lot of people in my life for that reason. I'm very particular. This is a time for you to think about that.
And it's okay. It's okay to do that.
Better, because then you can really circle the wagons, as we say. This is a great time to revisit habits and to evaluate how you're going to let those habits serve you better. Like, for example, how many of you have a habit of really relying too much on that glass of Chardonnay at the end of the day? This is a time to really say, wow, what am I doing here? Or whatever that may be.
Better habits always a good idea.
And just approach finance and friendships and beauty from a more conscious perspective. Just slow down, like to your point, right? Mm-hmm. Just slow down. We would love to hear your stories about Venus retrograde, and we'll share any that happened to us. But we are so grateful that you're here, and we're so honored that we've got to spend this time with you. And we would appreciate it if you find this helpful, that you would like it and share it and
send us your questions.
And send us your questions and come back and visit us. And for goodness sake, think deeply.
Love deeply.
speak gently,
That's a lot.
work hard,
And give freely.
and for goodness sake, be kind. Thanks y'all so much. We'll see you next podcast.